Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Delmar, and together with my co-host Mark Ronich, a statewide news service, and jbiztechvalley.com, we have a very, very special guest with us, Assemblyman Mike Simanowitz. Mike, can I call you by your first name?
You can call me anything you want. Just don't call me late for dinner.
That's right. Mike, welcome to the Jewish View.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Mark. It's
Mike,
a pleasure to be here.
And it's really special to have you here. I see that you have a lot on your plate. You're doing a lot of things. You're a freshman.
I'm not a freshman anymore, but
freshman plus,
right.
You know, not quite a sophomore legislator, but you came in the middle of a session when Nettie Mayerson, who you were chief of staff for,
Correct.
She retired, and then you tried to fill her shoes, and you were her chief of staff for so many years. So it was a natural transition.
There's many there because we've, Mark and I have many assemblymen on the show, and I don't have statistics. That's why I'm asking. Really, a few of them were chief of staffs, but it seems that would be a good. I mean, obviously, you would feel that you know what's happening, you know the laws. I mean, it's a good step.
It's definitely a natural progression. In fact, I often comment to other staffers, that I almost feel like it should be a prerequisite to be a member that you have to serve as a staffer to really understand, what's going on and the involvement of everybody. It's important, I think, to treat the staff well. And, I find that, the members who are former staffers are, make the extra effort to be nice. So it is. And it also gives you the institutional knowledge of knowing what's going on, knowing the issues in your community, and knowing how things work in Albany,
But you don't have the budget that Nettie had coming in.
No.
You see, that's what seniority gets you. The seniority,
seniority,
the more years you're there, the more money in your legislative office budget.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
Yeah, the state assembly, as opposed to, say, the New York City Council, works on a seniority basis as opposed to the council where you have a flat budget, and then if you're a committee chairman, you get extra, plus whatever. But
for more staff, I mean,
right. You get, depending on which committee you have, you may need more staff, you may need less staff. So it's. But in the assembly, it's all seniority based. And listen, I have no complaints.
What was the difference between the staff when Nettie was there and now you? What did she have? Since you were chief of staff, I figured you would know these.
It was significant.
No. What did it go from like 16 down to 3, or?
In terms of quantity or in terms of...
No, quantity.
I mean, quantity, I don't have, much. I mean, maybe I have 2 people less than we had under Nettie. I mean, but I have a couple of part-timers,
right.
I have more volunteers, and I have, cheaper workforce also. I can't afford to pay a staffer, $50,000, $60,000, whereas Nettie was, Nettie had the budget that, she could have,
so are you earning
more seasoned staff
as an assemblyman or more as chief?
I took a pay cut.
Really?
How do you like that?
I took a pay cut. But again, I was in the fortunate position of working for a senior member of the legislature, who the majority of her requests were not for her own, betterment, but was for her staff. And she had a significant staff allotment, so she was able. I was with Nettie for 15 years, so
right.
I incrementally, after 15 years, I got to a level where, unfortunately, I had to take a pay cut.
With your wife.
So when people say, "Why'd you run for the assembly?" I said, "I didn't have a choice. I needed a job. If it was my choice, Nettie would still be there, and I'd be a chief of staff still."
Okay. Well, you are on some really controversial committees, but you were also on a committee that I have no understanding why, and that's the Agriculture Committee. Kosher food? I don't know.
So the reason, it's interesting. So when you first come in as a newly elected official, you sit and you meet with the speaker and you have your orientation, and he hands you a list of all the committees. And of course, there are certain committees which, as a freshman, you're not going to get on. Ways and Means and Rules, education, health, rules. Right. Codes, they're the big ones that everybody wants to be on, and as a freshman, you're not going to get, you need more seniority. So you put in your requests, and you give him 10 or whatever, and he gives you 5 or 6, whatever the number is, and I put in my 10, and he calls me and tells me, "I have 5 for you, but I gave you a 6th." And I knew as soon as he said that the 6th was the Agriculture Committee, and I understand where the speaker's coming from. He feels very strongly that, it's important to have representation on the committee, somebody who would be interested in the kosher laws. But interestingly enough, I was very reluctant when he first assigned me to that committee, and I've subsequently become very involved in the committee. In fact, I've gotten very involved in the agriculture industry in the state. It's become very, I don't want to say an obsession, but certainly a topic of interest for me, because it really, most people don't know that agriculture is the single largest industry in the state of New York.
Mm-hmm.
It's bigger than the stock market, the stock exchange. So it's a tremendously important economic engine for the community, and it's
I
important.
just know that actually milk, is booming. The yogurts, the Greek yogurts, that's what again, I'm not on the inside like Mark is, but it's just a basic headline.
But you're a consumer.
Yeah. I don't know how much they're making.
Well, I have to tell you this, what I think is a funny story, that's why I'm saying it, is that when Shirley Chisholm first went to Congress, they put her on the Agriculture Committee, even though she was from Brooklyn and she was African American. They said, how do you mix with all these people from Middle America that are totally opposite where you come from? And she said, well, some brainiac heard that a tree grows in Brooklyn.
Well,
But
interestingly,
it was because the food stamp program.
Right, but
goes
interestingly
through the
enough,
Agriculture Committee, so that's why.
John Brown High School, which is not in my district, but it's literally right across from my district. I surround Queens. John Brown High School is really on the geographic block of Queens College, and I surround Queens College on 3 sides. So John Brown is right across the street. John Brown High School actually has the largest Future Farmers of America program in the state of New York.
Wow.
Yeah, people don't
No.
realize that. You're sitting in the Flushing, Kew Gardens Hills, Queens, and you'd think you'd find Future Farmers of America. They have an amazing program.
Because they never promote that at the state fair. I go to the Farm Bureau conferences when in the spring and fall. You never hear about that. You never see FFA Queens there.
The truth is, people know that John Brown. Unfortunately, a lot of it probably has to do with location and funding to get them up here or to get them up to conferences. And that's something that we've actually been working on getting them some funding so that they can actually hire a bus to bring them up here. When you have FFA Day up here, they're not up here. So it's stuff like that, and it's also important, I think, for a city boy to have a better understanding of what goes. New York State is a big place. It's one of my colleagues, Andy Goodell, tells me he's from as West Queens as you can West New York as you can get.
Right.
And he tells me there are 8 capitals that he's closer to than Albany.
That's right.
But it's important that I think that when we're voting on stuff, that people from the city or people from downstate have an understanding of what the issues facing upstaters is.
New York is the 9th largest economy in the world. Our economy is larger than most countries.
Wow.
That's phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And while agriculture is the #1 industry of the state, tourism is the #2 industry.
Correct.
And it's Paul Tonko, when he was an assemblyman, got up to talk to a Farm Bureau meeting, and he says, when most people think of New York State, they think of skyscrapers, they think of the Statue of Liberty, and they think of the bright lights on Broadway. He says, but let me tell you the real New York. Real New York is the silos are our skyscrapers, the bright lights in the milking barn are the bright lights of New York, and the liberty to farm one's own land is the liberty of New York State.
Absolutely. Listen,
and I just love that.
Yeah, that's great. It's great. People hear that there are dairy farms in New York State, and they're like, where do you have room for dairy farms?
But
there's grass in New York State.
And the Queens had their last farm close up, I believe, in the past within the last 10 years. They had a farm.
We're actually trying. We're working closely with the city on opening some new community farms. Nothing earth shattering, but farmers markets are big now in the city, and it's.
Do you go up?
It's a
I
natural
think it's
progression.
Senator Valesky or maybe Bill McGee. They have a tour of farms in Madison County, I think, and you slush through the muds and all that.
Yeah, I haven't. No, I haven't done it. I did a tour, but not. I don't know if it was what you're referring to, but I did do one of those tours a couple of years ago. But
all right, well, you're chair of the subcommittee on tuition assistance program,
right?
And you're on the higher education committee, which
dovetails. That's how I got the subcommittee.
Okay.
You can't be chair of a subcommittee unless you're on the actual committee.
Okay. So tell me why that's of interest to you, why you wanted that, and what's going on with those with higher ed and TAP.
Well, I wanted to be on the higher ed committee simply because not simply because, but basically because higher ed is important to me, and I think it's an important it's an important launching pad for our New York citizens. I mean, it's, you know, and it's an important tool for our communities, and, you know, it's a lot of the policy that's made by the Higher Education Committee or by the Assembly in general, you know, really impacts people at a very crucial stage. You know, there's so much, we're evolving so quickly in this state, you know, and in the country, in the world, you know, technology is becoming such a booming industry, and, you know, with the introduction of STEM, you know, science, technology, in the classroom. These are all things that we need to prepare ourselves for. We need to prepare our future learners for, and our future marketplace, you know, if we want to compete. I mean, New York has spent so much time, you know, the governor has put a lot of focus on the nanotech and so many other great industries that we want to attract to New York, but we also need to make sure that we're producing students that are capable of doing that. And I think, listen, you know, in all, just for the interest of full disclosure, the tuition assistance program subcommittee wasn't my choice. It was sort of handed to me. So, you know, but that being said, it's an important committee. Listen, TAP is a very important resource for a lot of our college kids, and even for, you know, our post, what do we want to call it, secondary yeshivas, who now are, you know, receiving TAP. You know, it's a valuable resource. It helps, you know, students who ordinarily wouldn't be able to afford, you know, a tuition, whether it's CUNY or SUNY or. And
what do you hear from those advocates that come up here? And
they want more money.
They want more. It's all about the money, right?
It is, and, you know, and one of the things one of the things that I'm focusing on is also trying to bring back the graduate TAP, which is, I think, a very important thing. You know, right now you only get, you know, undergrad. You only get TAP for undergrad. You know, and, you know, a lot of people now, an undergraduate degree isn't just
not
in the modern marketplace. It's, you're not going very far with just a bachelor's degree, and, you know, a lot of people need that college that graduate education, and, you know, we should, if we can, find the resources to provide that assistance.
Now, when you were chief of staff, at times you would have had to met with these people, and as an assemblyman, you personally meet with these folks.
Absolutely.
You know, do you have a chief of staff that meets with them, or do you enjoy the interaction meeting with these advocates?
I do the majority of the meetings myself. You know, I don't have quite the number of staffers as Nettie had. So, you know, especially up here in Albany, all I have is an intern, who, thankfully, you know, for the last 3 years, I've had really great quality interns. Okay. You know, but I do a lot of the meetings because I think, listen, you know, people are coming to Albany. You know, they're not coming to Albany to meet with staff. I mean, I think they recognize to a certain extent that they're going to have to meet with staff. But, you know, they want to meet with
There's
a
disappointment.
legislator.
There's the air comes out of the balloon when you come in and you're meeting with staff and you're not meeting with the main guy.
Well, it also depends who it is.
From experience.
It also depends who it is. You know, a lot of the lobbyists, a lot of the, you know, the advocacy groups, the larger ones, they understand. And listen, you know, it's not like when I first started in the assembly, you know, Tuesday was lobby day. There was no session on Tuesday. Right. It was committee meetings and lobby day. Right. You know, so you didn't have to worry about being in the Capitol. You could stay in the legislative office building all day long and meet with groups and go to your committee meetings, and, you know, you had time to devote to that.
I like
you know,
that.
Now it's much harder because we're in session every day that we're up here, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it makes it harder for the groups that are coming up. And, you know, like yesterday, we had all these kids up, you know, for, you know, advocating for universal pre-K or advocating for the charter schools in New York. And, you know, these are kids. These are kids who are coming up to their state capital. I mean, I remember my first trip to Washington. I was in awe. Like, you know, it's like, wow. Even my first trip to Albany, even though I don't think I came up here to lobby, I think I just came up here, you know, with my family. My mother had some state ed business to do, but, you know, that's the, you know, this is their first exposure. You know, I was walking out from the legislative office building to go to the Capitol. I often try to go across the street as opposed to walking underneath because I like getting fresh air every once in a while, even though it was pretty cold yesterday. And I walked out, and, you know, there was an overflow crowd from one of the rallies in front of the stairs. The overflow crowd was in the plaza outside the legislative office building, and, you know, the bunch of little kindergartners, and one girl looked up and says, "Are you the government?" You know, so of course I stopped and I introduced myself and I said hello, and we talked about her school and we talked about her parents, and you know, people we need to remember as elected officials that nobody in that chamber can vote for us, unless a staffer happens to live in your district. But nobody in that chamber can vote for you. It's the people back home, it's the people that come up who have the interest in their whatever it is, whether it's agriculture or tuition assistance or kosher laws, or whatever it is, whatever the case may be. These are the people that send us to Albany. These are the people that we're here to represent. These are the people that want to have their voices heard and want to feel like we're cognizant of that. So, that's...
I want to just talk to you about even your personal life. You are an Orthodox Jewish person.
Absolutely.
And I think that, listening to you, it seems like you're sensitive to a lot of issues because of that. Maybe how much does that personal life, you're educated as a Jewish person. For example, education is super important to the Jewish people in general, and Orthodox Jews, they're always learning, and as a rabbi, I'm telling them, learn, learn, learn. I have classes constantly. So, obviously that has a bearing in the way you have an outlook for all the people of New York State.
Oh, for sure, for sure. You get, your childhood is really what prepares you for your future life. It's your life experiences that really develop you as a person and make you who you're going to become. There's only so much you get from school, and so much that you get from shul or your individual pulpit rabbi in your community, or your rebbeim, or your teachers in school, and your parents. It all sort of comes together and molds who you're going to be. And I think as a legislator, I think that was very important to sort of my demeanor. In terms of issues that are important to the community. It's hard to make somebody from Jamestown understand the tuition crisis in New York City. But I'm living it. I have 4 kids, and are in yeshiva. I pay yeshiva tuition. And that goes back to what I was talking about the agriculture community. I think it's important that everybody understand, what. It's hard. There's always this sort of like conflict between upstate, downstate, and downstate controls the state, and that's a terrible thing for people to feel. And I think in yeshiva, coming from a religious background, your critical thinking, I think, is very ingrained in you. When it's Gemara and Mishnah Berurah, and whatever it is, it's like ingrained in you. So it helps when you're trying to analyze legislation, or you're trying to analyze a specific issue that may be controversial. I would say it's nowhere near an exaggeration to say that I think my religious upbringing was very, very crucial in developing the type of legislator that I am.
So how do you live up here when there's no, as of now, no kosher restaurant, but you have Price Chopper, you have kosher Price Chopper. Obviously, you're not as thin as Phil Goldfeder, but
Although let me tell you, I've seen him eat. He could pack it in.
His metabolism is very.
He could pack it in.
And the junk food. He says he has a whole.
He has a stash. Yeah,
stash of junk food. What do you do up here?
So I stay in a hotel, motel up here. I either bring, my weeks or whatever, 3 days.
What do you bring for food? Do you bring 2 cans of tuna, or
bring food? I have a kosher microwave in my office. It really depends on the week, but or I go up to the Price Chopper and.
So
and
what
load
are your
up.
favorite foods?
My favorite foods. I'm easy. I eat, as you could tell, I eat.
You eat anything?
I eat, not anything, but I eat most things. I grew up paying my way through college. I worked a lot in the catering business, so I've got an appreciation for food. Amazingly, there's no shortage. There's really no shortage of things that I could find to eat.
I was just wondering, how I ask this of everyone. How they managed to survive up here. I guess what I'm trying to do is make the case to Angela Mazzone, who does Mazzone Hospitality at the Capitol, to have kosher food or a kosher food choice.
Listen, absolutely. It's often, and it's not just the Orthodox, it's not just the kosher. You'd be amazed how many of my colleagues say, I go out often with them, even if just to be social, and I sit and I'll drink a glass of water or or soda, and just watch them eat, and they feel terrible. Isn't there a kosher place we can go eat with you? They would go.
Right.
They absolutely would. And it would be convenient, especially during the day, if we're in session, if it's an especially long day. I mean, often is the time last year when session went very long, and I may not have necessarily brought enough, and I was hungry in the middle of the day, and I said, you know what, I'm going to get in my car and drive to Price Chopper, and I'll come back, and so I think it would be great if she would, have a kosher selection. Interestingly enough, there's a hotel and indoor water park in Pennsylvania. It's called Great Wolf Lodge. I'm sure you've heard of it.
Yeah.
So I was there for one night with my kids during their winter vacation, and they have a whole selection of they bring it from one of the restaurants, I think in Teaneck or whatever, of wraps and salads and things of that nature.
There are ways to make it work if you want to make it work.
Yeah, but you also need an audience. You need a customer base.
Right. Okay. But I'm
although,
just saying.
Although let me tell you, a lot of my non-Jewish colleagues prefer kosher food.
Absolutely. I go to Citi Field, and I go to MetLife, and I go to Yankee Stadium. And they all have kosher kiosks there. State Fair has an international food pavilion, but they don't have a kosher kiosk.
Right.
And how many families do I see with multiple baby carriages, and one of the baby carriages just filled with food?
Right.
Right,
absolutely.
Not just babies. Anyway, I just want to follow up with some of the legislation that you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You have a bill that you're proposing that broadens the scope of child abuse and neglected children to include proof of positive controlled substance toxicology report on a newborn infant.
Right.
What's that about?
So, basically, and I'll be brief because I know this is a short show, if a child tests positive at birth for positive tox screen, it means that the mother didn't just have a glass of wine, at dinner the other night. It's generally in the bloodstream. They have tox screens. I mean, unfortunately, I honestly don't. I think it's less prevalent than it once was, but it's still an issue. You have babies that are being born addicted to cocaine.
That's right.
And other drugs,
For sure.
and
you have HIV babies, which Nettie was a big.
and if for example, it's often when we debate the issue of abortion. I'm not getting into that topic, but often when you debate the issue of late-term abortion, people make the argument, is it 2 days before birth? Is it any better than 2 days after birth? So if you were a parent and you left a bottle of pills, or you left alcohol, or you gave your child, controlled substances at 2 years old, you would be charged with child endangerment. Why is it any less so that when you're doing it in utero, and you're
Right.
you're delivering, you're birthing a baby that is
How did
addicted.
you get wind to sponsor?
It was actually I can't take credit for it. It was actually one of Nettie's bills that I picked up. Nettie had a lot of very good bills on child abuse, and some of them she was able to get past. But
And what about increasing the penalties for the offense of making graffiti?
So really
your definition of graffiti may be someone's definition of art, and beautiful art. What is graffiti?
All art is in the eye of the beholder, I guess.
Yeah.
And even graffiti, even what we would call graffiti, if it's done in a place where it's legal and it's and somebody's giving them permission to do it, and it's not, dirtying a community, so to speak, then it's fine. But when you are going out into the community, and we spend in New York City specifically, I mean, thousands upon thousands of dollars cleaning up, abandoned, whether it's construction fences or I mean, New York City Council actually passed a bill recently to make the security gates on storefronts, that they can't be opaque. Mm-hmm. They have to be, you have to be able to see through them. But part of it is because of the graffiti. I mean, we had.
So when you increase the penalties, what do you want to increase them from and to? Do you know offhand?
I don't remember offhand,
Okay.
but it's not. It's a misdemeanor any way you slice it. So it's really just to give more teeth to the offense. to try to discourage. First of all, a lot of the graffiti artists, and we'll call them artists, are youthful offenders. They are, right. And but you don't want.
Who else can get all the way up there to where they?
Let me tell you, I've seen graffiti on places that you wouldn't. I'm still baffled to this day how they got up there. I have no idea.
With no one seeing.
In the BQE in Brooklyn, when you come over the Kosciuszko Bridge, they have a lot of the banner, the billboards up. They're up hundreds of feet in the air, and you got people graffitiing on them. And like, who'd be crazy enough to climb up there just to write the
their initials.
Kilroy was here or whatever it is.
All right, so let me. This one really got to me because I don't know how you ever came up with this. Creating the Proper Tire Repair Act.
So that's actually that bill is actually not. It's actually been changed.
Oh, okay.
No, it still is. It still is.
Okay.
It's well. Listen, it's a safety issue, and it was actually brought to me by some constituents who had. So the bill as it was written originally is there's actually a second bill in there now, which is the one we're really pushing, which all it basically says is that a tire that cannot pass state inspection cannot be repaired. So in other words, if you get a flat tire, right, you get a nail in your tire, you get a punctured tire, and you go into a repair shop to get it fixed, they want a patch put on or a plug put in, depending on, oftentimes the tire's bald. I mean, just the other day, you guys got hit with some bad snow, but in the city it seems like we got hit much worse. Okay. I was helping a woman. I helped push a woman out of a spot. All 4 tires were bald, and she had no concept, no clue. Mm-hmm. Sometimes a nail in the tire is the first real indication that you have an issue with, or the first real symptom that let me have the tire checked, and then you find out that it's right. It's not safe, and then you get on the highway, and so there are people who have been victims of blowouts or. So
what has it been changed to?
So now it said what the bill says. What the original bill said, we sort of dictated how a tire has to be fixed.
Oh, okay.
Which really that was the original concept, but it didn't fit. There were too many issues with that. So basically, what the bill says now is that any tire that cannot pass state inspection.
My God, we have a few minutes left. Mark told his cute story. I have to tell I'm really from Chicago. And
I can tell by the accent.
Yeah, right.
If you think it snows in New York City, it's like this is calm compared to Chicago. Any case, and when you're in the city and it's hard to parking spaces, my father was trying to get out, and some young guy came over to him, and this remind me, pushed him out. So his neighbor came over to him. You know who pushed you out? Yeah, some nice guy down the block. He says, no. That was our alderman, like the city council in Chicago. He says, he's got my vote over here. It's the first time anybody did anything for me over here my whole life.
Office. Yeah. So let me just ask you.
I'll start wearing a jacket that says Assemblyman Mike Simanowitz, vote for me. Yeah.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Why are you on the Puerto Rican Hispanic Task Force?
I'm not. I don't know why.
Not.
I don't know why that's on there. No.
It's on your.
Yeah, I know. I actually just saw that recently. I'm
not. Neely Rosick is on also.
Well, Neely Rosick is actually
because she
is Argentinian by she was born in Israel, but her family is actually Argentinian.
So that's the Hispanic
You go speak to her. Yeah,
she'll be on the show.
You can go speak to her in Spanish. She speaks. I think she speaks Spanish and Hebrew just as fluently as she does English.
Wow. Okay. Well, you have to brush up on your Spanish because you got to Hebrew.
Spanish
okay, fine. We'll confuse the audience totally. Okay. Well, I this half hour went so quickly. You were just such a super assemblyman, and I just think. I see you in action is 2 words. I see you in action all the time down at the Capitol,
right.
And it's really
thank you. It really is a pleasure being up here. It's nice to sort of connect with the Jewish community up here in Albany. More than just going to shul in the morning and visiting Price Chopper.
Okay.
Well, Mike could just give you a blessing. Mark always tells me to give a blessing to another Jew. That really in Hebrew for our audience, Kiddush Shem means the sanctification of God's name. You do something remarkable. Not only are you Jewish, but you're an Orthodox Jewish person, but you're standing up for Jewish standards, and you say sincerely, not just being myopic, and this is what I care about the Jewish people in New York State, which are sizable in itself, but caring about like that Western New York and just the education of everybody with their cars, their safety, and really then it's a beautiful thing that you personify what a Jewish person is.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
On the show.
Thank you for having me.